Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are going to be doing an arduous one. So today we're doing Black Cat, but more importantly we're doing backgrounds, which is something which I don't normally do all that much. Not even that I don't do it much, but that I don't normally focus too heavily on it. This time we have to do a background of a degree of detail, so it's going to take a little while. And realistically here our character shouldn't take a super long amount of time, but the background almost certainly will, because I'm going to have to do multi-point perspective. So I'll be walking you through that, because that's the whole task. Is a very, I don't know. It's simple, but it's confusing at times. So I'll walk you through that, and that'll be the big one I think for this. But that doesn't mean I'll actually have to be showing you some base sketching stuff, so yeah. That's an unusual peek behind the curtain, I suppose. But yeah, anyways, I'll roll the intro and then we can begin. We can get into this, which will likely take multiple recordings to finish. Anyways, intro time. Okay, so we've got our character, and for some reason I put this little bit of ground detailing for scratching the ground into the as part of her base sketch. I suppose it doesn't really matter. The detail layer is going to all be one thing anyway, so it doesn't really matter in the end. But yeah, so this is basically just a fairly normal Black Cat design, but I gave her some of these little little lines and stuff like that, these little kind of seams here and there, just to maybe make things look a little bit more interesting. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. But I'll be really making those lines quite thin, because I don't want it to just be lines for the sake of lines. So I'll be thinning out a lot of those little lines, and largely the whole costume is still going to be black anyway, so it's going to be a case of where it will be a very minor detail. But yeah, that's really all there is to the character. The character isn't really the focus of this so much. Focus is doing the backgrounds. So, first things first. When it comes to doing multi-point perspective, or points of any kind of perspective, what you need is a horizon line. That's the first thing you need. So this is our horizon line. It's just a line. Straight line. It can be anywhere on the screen, but that dictates where the horizon is. So for example, if I were to put the horizon line up here, that would dictate that we're at a higher angle. And so the lower you have it, the lower the angle. So this is lower in the screen, so it's a slightly lower angle. Hence why this foot is bigger, and then this hand is bigger, and then with the actual character, with Black Cat herself, it starts big and then gets a little smaller as it goes up. I had to use the Frankenstein method to create this pose, by the way. That is a term which I use every now and then just to describe whenever I basically get multiple pieces of reference and jam them together in a way where it kind of forms something new-ish. And that's what I did here. I merged like 3 or 4 pieces of reference into one, and I think it looks okay. I don't think there's any obvious weirdness to it. That was a lot of effort in and of itself. But yeah, so we've got the horizon line. And so the next thing is adding vanishing points. So vanishing points are our points of perspective. So whenever I say multi-point perspective, I'm going to need to... Right, so we're going to ignore that for a second. So whenever I say there's points of perspective, a vanishing point is a single point on the line. Say if I were to draw like a little circle on the line, I don't need to do that, because my tool here, my polygon tool, I just set it to have 100 sides and however many. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on the line, and then I'm going to draw out from there, and then now we've got perspective. This is a point of perspective. So if we were doing 1 point perspective, this would be all the lines that we need to basically, say if I were to draw down from here, that would be the one edge, draw down from there, that'd be one edge, then so on and so forth. But I'm not going to be doing that. We're doing multiple points of perspective, meaning we have multiple points. Now, not all of them need to be on the horizon line. you kind of should for the most part, because it makes it easier to follow. But whenever you start getting into like 5-point perspective and however many more points, it will get exponentially more difficult. But what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be doing 3-point perspective. So as we do this, it should become obvious the kind of way that shapes collide and form into interesting looking things. So that is our second point, and now you can start seeing the grid is forming here. So here, if I was to draw a straight line down here, this would basically form one easy side, and then so this is 2 of our points. We still need a third, and this is where it starts getting difficult because I kind of don't know where the third should be. So what if I put the third down here? How does that look? That's not necessary. That's kind of confusing. That would be if like the street was down here or something like that, but that's not what we're doing. So what if I put the other point here? What if I put the other point there? How does that work for us? See, this is similar to what I've already got. Pretty similar to what I've already got. But yeah, so we're going to be using this perspective grid to help us inform the background. Now I already have an attempted background, but I don't think that one's very good, so I'm probably going to delete it and try again. Now for my background here, I'm probably not going to be going super detailed for this, more or less. I'm going to be doing little bits here and there, but it's not going to be crazy detailed. I'm not going to be recreating anything specific about the New York skyline. I'm just going to be trying to kind of more or less create some buildings. That's it. Because this is more or less just a demonstration of how this type of perspective works, which is to say it's complicated. Well, not complicated, but it can be a pain in the ass. So yeah, we've got 3 points. Now the third point I'm still not super into, because this part is working for me, sort of. Some of this is working for me, because this is sort of the shape that I want to the building that Black Cat is on. This kind of shape here of going like... So yeah, the idea of the way that you do these points of perspective is, now let me start demonstrating this. So I'll create a new layer, because this is what we've got more or less on the background, which I don't really like this all that much. So we're going to be trying again, more or less. So I'm going to say this line goes from there to there, like that, and then this line we follow along here until we get to there. But we weren't perfect on that, I don't think. No. We gotta be very careful about how we follow along these lines, because it can be very easy to kind of lose the track of what we're doing. Now, then this one will come down like that, and there, we now get the building that Black Cat is on. So as we turn off these little bits here, we start to kind of feel a little bit more of what we're doing. So that's kind of the edge that we've got there. But you see, this is the thing. It becomes kind of confusing if you're not careful about it. So which of these was the... Okay, yeah, 5 is the one that I added more recently. And there's this one. So if this line keeps going that way, that means it hits that vanishing point, and then goes along like that, I believe. Again, this is a very confusing process, I find, a lot of the time. I think we're going to actually redo this to a degree. Because the thing that can happen a lot of the time is that whenever you're doing one of these things, you can kind of end up creating weird shapes that you didn't want a lot of the time. So what did my other grid create? My other grid adds... Okay, yeah, something worth noting is the Photoshop gets a little unhappy whenever you start having a ton of different perspective grids active at the one time. So, yeah, it's best to be careful about which ones you use. So yeah, this is the thing. Our original grid was a little bit more simple, within reason, even though the points are, I think, roughly in the same place, more or less. The original, this vanishing point here is not exactly in the right place, but yeah. Yeah, this is the thing. This doesn't adhere quite as closely to the horizon line as the new one does. But yeah, I might... yeah, it's just... can be a bit of a pain sometimes. So, we're going to do it like this. And then this one will then connect to that vanishing point. Because, yeah, we want this building that she is on to kind of keep going in that direction. And again, we're not going to really be adhering too closely to the horizon line really at all, but we're going to be adhering to the vanishing points because that's a little easier to follow. So yeah, we'll be bringing this line down like that. So now, what else do we need to do? Now we need to start adding buildings in the background. So this is where I got confused last time. This is where things got difficult. So right, the way that we want to try and form these lines is, you see how these dots down this way kind of conform like that. We're going to want to try and keep to these to a degree. Now again, I'm going to be doing this in very basic rectangular shapes. So let's say this building keeps going like that. And then this comes over like that, follows that line. That means that we should be having these lines like this. And then... Actually, no, this one should probably just keep going off screen. That feels like it makes more sense. Because again, we're seeing two sides of the same building here, so this is kind of worth noting that this can get kind of messy whenever you're doing it like this. So you got multiple layers of grid here. Now again, it's worth noting that the closer we get to the vanishing points, the more kind of close all our lines are going to get, because that's the nature of the multiple points in perspective. Is that, yeah, things are going to get a little bit packed together. Yeah, we don't want to obscure too much of the character here, because that'll just make my life harder later. So right, we got this line. Let's say it kind of comes around here is where the building stops, which means that this is a smaller building. It's a thinner one. It comes up like that. And then you won't see the other side of it because the side is flatter, because the way that this side of the perspective hits over here. Again, I'm not amazing at multiple point perspective, I find, because I find it to be quite difficult in terms of managing all the different lines. So we're going to want to bring up another line here, something like that. And yeah, see, we're starting to get the idea of it here now. So again, this is the closest building, and then it kind of stutters out from there. But yeah, it's worth noting that again, you're going to get a lot of lines which become confusing and stuff like this. So it's just a thing of where it can be difficult to do. Does that look? Yeah. So these buildings are almost like stuttering down. Like these are kind of taller, but because we're kind of at such a weird angle, we're seeing these kind of lines come up like that. And yeah, we're seeing like less of the sides almost, which means realistically speaking, we shouldn't actually be seeing that there. We should be seeing this here. And that's where it should be, okay. And that's where it should be connecting up like that. Because the building itself is flat going along that way, and then it'd be coming down like that, right? That'd be more or less what we're seeing. So we'd be seeing like a flat line basically there. Seeing as well, this is for some reason created another dot going that way. Again, this is the frustrating part of using shift on, of using the shift key during Photoshop, because the shift key is what helps us create straight lines, but it's also if you just hit shift and then tap one point and then another point, you'll get a line connecting those two things. So sometimes Photoshop will think that you're trying to connect two different lines whenever you're actually just trying to get a normal straight line, which can be a bit annoying. But yeah, this is the kind of gist of what we're going for here, more or less. So I think this is a little cleaner than what we had before, I think. Yeah, this is definitely a little cleaner than what we had before. It certainly looks a little bit more like buildings, I would say. So as one tiny final one, I'm going to do something like this. Let's see how that works. How does that look? Remove this. Remove this. How's that? Pretty close in terms of buildings, but yeah, well, let's see what we've got here. Like that. And yeah, again, part of the problem with the polygon tool is that it gets thinner as it goes out, so we can see that this is the line that we want here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that, I'm going to tap that out to there. It's not quite what I'm looking for. Yeah, it can be difficult to do this properly because it's not easy to do. You don't want just like space leading out into a direction really. So let's see if I put this one here, put it there, and then just put another one here. Again, sometimes you don't necessarily need to have the big points coming up like that. Sometimes you just need to have the building go infinitely off the page. Because yeah, we're going to be using this same perspective grid for adding in our windows and stuff like that, or actual detailing to it later. But yeah, this is part of the reason why I feel like this is going to be a recording that takes multiple days. Because it is quite detailed with a lot of this stuff. So right, there goes our background. Now, what are we looking at with these buildings? Again, they're obviously just flat rectangles currently. But this is the kind of idea that we're going for. Yeah, more or less this is kind of what we've got. Because, yeah. Again, the way the parts that these intersect is a kind of where the grid intersects is a good place to start considering adding in straight lines, because that is a clear place of where each of these points connect, meaning that this is adhering to the grid a decent bit of perspective. But yeah, that has been about 20 minutes of me explaining multi-point perspective. And yeah, that's more or less how that works. And I can delete some of this other stuff actually. I should do that now. Let's delete the original one. This is the new one, and this is now BG base. And then this is our old grid, this is our new grid. We can delete this one, because those dramatically increase the file size on Photoshop. So right, this is now all our background stuff, which we don't need anymore. That's right. We do have a character to draw as well, but because the character is so much smaller on the page, I think that might make things a little quicker. Now, again, I'll probably get the detailing of this done, and then maybe the detailing of the background done within today, but that's also reasonably optimistic, I think. But yeah, the problem is that once I've done this, it's going to be quite a while before I get the chance to do any more of this. So yeah, we'll see what happens, I guess. But yeah, I think now is a good time to start speeding things up so that I can actually get through a decent heft of this in a timely manner. But yeah, so I will begin, I think, actually drawing the character now. And again, this should be reasonably quick, I think, more or less. More or less. I do still have to draw hair and fur. Fur is not quick. So yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see how much of this I can get through in a timely manner. But yeah, I'll be back once I'm done the details of the character. Okay, so it's been 2 weeks since the last time I was doing this. So yeah, it has been a while. I've shaven. Things are slightly different now. That is the only difference. I'm wearing a different shirt as well, but that's slightly more obvious. Yeah, so the last time while I was doing this, I obviously didn't have enough time. I don't remember exactly, but I didn't have enough time to finish details in the background as well, so I just did the details in the character. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to do the details in the background, and today I don't have much time either, so I'm probably going to end up having to do the colors in a different sitting as well. So yeah, realistically speaking, to be honest with you, I feel like I'm going to have to kind of compromise a little bit on some of the background bits, because some of this is just not quite working for me. Even though the perspective is sound, some of this is not quite working for me, and I think I need to find a different way of doing it. I mean, I explained the multi-point perspective. That was the big thing I wanted to explain, but I don't know if I'm actually going to end up using it, because some of this is just not right. Some of this is just not quite right. Yeah. There's bits of this which I just kind of don't like. Like the buildings here just don't have quite the right shape. The way that they kind of come up into this point is not really making enough sense to me. Like here it's not too bad, but it just feels like the perspective's getting too intense out here. And let me put the grid back on. Is this the right grid? It is. Like the way that this kind of conforms is just not quite right here to me, I think. I might need to compromise on some of this here, because it's the upward part here which is just not really looking right, because like logically this is the shape that the roof here should be in, is like that, more or less. And yeah, it's just kind of not sitting right with me. Yeah. I feel like realistically, even though this is a 3-point perspective, I'm actually only really using 2 points, because this third point doesn't really reach over to this side all that much. It reaches up to there, it kind of reaches over to this side a little bit, but it's conflicting with this middle point here a lot more. Yeah. I don't know about how I'm feeling about some of this perspective. I might need to have a good think about it, but I'm going to have a look for some images of New York buildings. I'm not going to use any particular noteworthy buildings in particular. I'm just going to see if I can try and match some of the vague, some of the architecture, because New York has very particular. New York has a very particular kind of. New York's buildings, yeah, tend to have like a very particular look to them, with the kind of the very flat tops, and they kind of are all very gridded. So yeah, it's quite a particular look to a lot of these buildings. Yeah. Alright, well, I think I've got a decent kind of idea of what I want to do here anyways. I'll see what I can do, but most likely I'm going to have to make some concessions here somewhere, and I'm not quite sure where. But yeah, in all likelihood, the colors here are going to end up being on a different sitting entirely. So, we'll see what I can get done. If I can get it all done, I will, but I kind of doubt that I will. So, let's see if I can get some of this detail done here on the buildings. Okay, so I decided to change the deal a little bit as I finished the background. So I wasn't really feeling it when it came to the perspective. I don't know whether it was the way I set up the grid or what, but I just wasn't really into it with the way that it worked out. So I decided to alter it and just have it be the kind of layers of city chunk, which I'm then going to do a color on and then slightly erase, slightly erase, slightly erase. I've done this trick before in the past, but I haven't done it recently, so I suppose I'll show that later, which I'll just put a flat color in and then just softly erase it with like a watercolor brush, and I'll do it here so that it creates the idea of little bits of lighting coming through. And so largely I'm going to be using a kind of a red and blue color palette because Spider-Man, so that makes a little bit more sense. And yeah, I did a little pattern here. I have pattern brushes which I use sometimes, but I haven't shown them in this. I don't think I've shown them here before. But yeah, I tried to find one for the kind of like the rooftop. I was going to use like a kind of a cracked texture, but it just didn't look right. But this one obviously had to try and apply some perspective to it. It's not perfect. It's slightly off. It's slightly askew in that direction. But it was a nightmare to put it to do it this way in the first place. You probably saw me fiddling with that for quite a while. So yeah, that was the primary issue there, was that took forever to try and actually get it into this position in the first place. But yeah, so I have kind of somewhat betrayed the point of this whole thing by not doing the perspective on the background. But I've done the perspective here. I've still kept the perspective on these front buildings. But I just said it would, both in the interest of time and in the interest of my own sanity, I was going to do this instead, because this is somewhat more easy to understand, and it's a lot less maddening to deal with than doing perspective on a number of buildings. So this is what I went with, and yeah. Realistically speaking, since her colors shouldn't take very long, I'll probably just do all the colors in this one run. Again, it won't take very long, it'll be pretty quick all in all. So, because yeah, there's only like 2 or 3 colors going on here. So, what I intend to do is I'm going to have her hair be slightly different in color than the fur. The fur I'm going to have be a very, very white color, but her hair I'm going to have slightly skewed towards blonde, ever so slight. But yeah, the fur will skew probably more towards blue, because that's the kind of color I'm going to have her black skew towards, is slightly blue as well. But yeah, so I'll probably do that now, and then I might be able to get the rest of this done in this sitting, who knows. I'm still not flush on time, so I'll probably just get the colors done, and then you'll see me on a different day as part of the same thing. So yeah, anyways, I'll do this. Okay, so now the following day. So last time I finished up all my colors, and it didn't take very long. But yeah, you'll notice I also did all my background, all my finished up backgrounding stuff here, and I'm pretty sure I don't need to leave these on. They blend a lot more like this. I actually kind of prefer them like this, because I think the hard edge is a little too much here. It's a little much. I kind of prefer them with a naked edge, because it all kind of blends in nicely like that, I think. And so yeah, the way that I did this obviously was, I mean, it's pretty obvious. I just did shapes, but specifically the colors, the important part of the colors on these is I had to pick colors which kind of naturally stuttered back out, so that whenever I erased it, it naturally went up in a way that made sense. So for example, because the point of this is that there's light coming from down here that's then kind of misting up along here, same way from below the purple buildings, that kind of comes down there, same with below the blue ones. So I had to kind of pick colors which went naturally along the scale, but slightly darker, of the actual background gradient. That's really it. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave those off. I don't think I need those on. I think I'm fine with leaving those off. Yeah, so now what I have to do is the painting. And the painting, realistically speaking, shouldn't take too long. I am going to paint these buildings here at the front. I'm obviously not going to do any sort of shading on the background here. There's no point in doing that. Yeah, it's ultimately quite pointless. But what I will do is I will... I don't think I'll do detailed shading on these buildings. I don't know if there's much of a point to doing it. There's not going to be a light line or anything on these. So realistically speaking, once I've done the painted shading, that'll be kind of it for the background stuff, and then I can just finish off the character, and that'll be us. So realistically speaking, I just have to do some painting, then, yeah, so I have to do the painting, which is on character and background, then I have to do the detailed shading and the light line, which is only on the character, and then we're done. So I should be able to get this done reasonably fast. This should be done pretty quickly. All things considered, I shouldn't have a huge amount of dilly-dallying to do here. So with all that said, I will get into the shading here, the painted shading on the character. So, yeah. Okay, so that is our painted shading done. So I did my best to kind of do something with the rooftops, and I think I did alright with them. I mean, that's all the shading they're really going to be getting. The gradient maps will kind of do a little bit to darken them and dull it down a little bit, so it shouldn't be too bad there. But yeah, so with Black Cat's costume, I tried to give it a certain kind of shine to it to try and get the right kind of color scheme on it, but I think I might consider changing the layer type here. Maybe just try and change it to... No, that's too much. No. And this is the thing, I could realistically make it a lot darker like this, but I don't think that's going to help very much. I think, to be honest, on normal it actually isn't too bad. And I think it'll be fine once I go through and add all the the bits of darker shading and stuff like that. With this, with my what do you call it? Detailed shading. But yeah, I think once this goes on, that should kind of help a little bit. I might actually consider going through and doing a tiny bit of detailed shading on some of this, if only just to emphasize some of the shading underneath her, because there should obviously be some darker shading there. Yeah, I might have a think about it. But yeah, anyways, regardless, I'm going to do all the detailed shading and the light line and everything within this section. So yeah, I will do that here now, and then I think that'll be us more or less after that. But yeah, I will do this and then I'll be back. Okay, it's time for finishing touches. Yeah, so that surprisingly didn't take very long to do the last parts of this. Yeah, all that stuff was fine. So what I did there a little while ago, you might have seen, I didn't bother doing any detailed shading on the background, but what I did do is I applied a little shadow underneath. So I just got the lasso tool, made a little kind of area underneath her, and then just made like a low opacity black and then put some blur on it, and that was that. So yeah, that's really all I needed to do there for that. So yeah, now it's time for the gradient maps. We're just going to do some finishing touches very quickly. The color scheme I think I'm going to go for here is going to be blue and red, with red being the darker color. Have it be purplier than that, and we're going to want to try and darken this quite a bit with the gradient map, I think. So we're going to want a bluey color like that, put it over here somewhere like that. And then put another one here, make it slightly purplier, put it there, like here. And then put one here, and then make this one that kind of purple. Might want to actually brighten this one up a tiny bit. Alright, so yeah, currently we're looking at a pretty dark color palette. I might need to bring this back a tiny bit. This may be more in the middle. I think I need to make this one slightly brighter. I think it's maybe a little too dark. Let's have a zoom in and see how this affects everything. As it stands, it's okay. Sure, let's have a look on overlay. Okay, on overlay it does definitely make things a lot darker. This is the color scheme which I wanted anyways. A thing which I'd considered was adding like snow or something, but like just basically for the nature of the color palette, but I don't think I really want to do that. I think that's a unnecessary thing to do. Yeah, so we're going to go with soft light. We're going to go with soft light on 60% as per usual. So this one's, again, it's a softer type of shading, but again, we are going to be making this a lot darker with other stuff. So this one now we're going to go for a luminosity, which will be a little bit of a duller one. It'll preserve our original colors a little bit more. That's normally what it does. Make this one pretty small, but yeah, it darkens everything quite a bit. And then we're going to get a color burn, which will burn over our new colors from the gradient map. But I might actually leave this higher up. I'll leave it at 15% this time. I normally wouldn't put the color burn very high in terms of percentage, but I want this to have a cooler, kind of cooler tone to the colors. Yeah, I would like to kind of maintain a nice, cooler tone, as I say. Something softer, something a little less kind of neutral. I might even turn up the soft light to 75%, 80% even maybe. Yeah, I like that a little bit more. So yeah, we're getting the tones that we want. This is the thing, I tend to stick with these 3 gradient maps because I can tinker with them a little bit. I don't normally, but I can. I find that they're a little easier to tinker with because we want these buildings at the very back to be almost kind of disappearing into the night sky, even though they have lights on them. But yeah, I want this one to be a dark one. I want this to be like visually quite dark because it's supposed to be nighttime, and I've wanted to do it to be a little darker. And also, I tend to be doing a lot of darker tones recently in these videos. I tend to be doing a lot of visually darker stuff, but I think it's fun to do. But yeah, what is the other thing I need? Oh yeah, I need to do a texture. That's the last thing. I need to throw a texture over it. Now, I've talked about this before, but the texture, basically all it does is it just kind of adds a little bit of a watercolor wash to the whole thing, which gives it a nice kind of, it kind of brings things together a little bit more. Yeah, it kind of blends things together a little bit more, and it kind of, yeah, it disperses our colors in a way which just kind of helps, and it does brighten up the image a little bit, which is why I always make the gradient maps so much darker to accommodate. So yeah, we'll switch this to an overlay layer, and then we'll turn it down to probably 30%. 30% should be fine. And let's see how this looks. So again, this is going to be pretty aggressive on our gradient, or not our gradient, on our background colors. You can see it affecting some of this stuff because because obviously with the way that I've erased all this stuff and blurred it out, it's kind of really aggressively spreading out our brain's fighting me now, but yeah, it's really kind of aggressively spreading out these the buildings in the background. The way that they kind of erase out into the color at the top now is a little bit more aggressive, as you can see. So that's how it is from off, that's how it is when it's on. So yeah, it adds this kind of nice watercolor wash to it, which again, it highlights our lighter areas and it darkens our darker areas. So that's really all it does. It mostly acts as a kind of a contrast boost, and again, it gives it a nice little wash of texture. So yeah, that is us more or less. This is the most individual recordings that any one art video has ever been. I think the Sentinel one was 2. I think that one was only 2, but this one's 3. And that's the most I've ever done, I think. Usually I only ever do 2. If I do split a recording, I only ever split it in 2. Which I don't normally like doing, but I mean, I didn't have many options. I've had very little time recently to do these, and I mean, hell, there was a 2-week break in between the first 2 recordings. At least there was only a 1-day break in between the second 2. But yeah. Yeah, I think this was a fun one. It was fun, but it was very difficult. I had to veto a lot of ideas. This is probably the one where you've seen the most kind of fluid, I suppose, idea of the lot. Because, I mean, the idea initially was to just do backgrounds. That was the whole idea. But I kind of messed up my perspective entirely. And obviously the positioning of the character didn't help that, because the character had to be positioned in this exact place, because I'd already done that base sketch. So that's the thing. I couldn't really alter the angle of the character, meaning that this is the angle that it had to be at. But unfortunately, this angle doesn't make it easy to do good building perspective. Well, not even that doesn't make it easy. It just doesn't work quite the way that I wanted to do it, if that makes any sense. With the way that I wanted to do it, I would have needed flatter, effectively for the horizon line to be here, more or less, and for her foot, or both her kind of her full body to be on the exact same plane. None of the kind of coming towards the camera bits. It would have all needed to be on the same plane. The buildings at the front needed to be flat. That way, at the back, you could see them kind of craning up. The camera's almost like looking up like that. And again, so that she's kind of exactly on the horizon line. That way, it kind of flows a little nicer. But unfortunately, that was not the way that I did it. The way that I kind of collaged my reference, I didn't think about this. So that ended up with this problem. But ultimately, I think I made it work. I do think it's still a good piece, but I kind of do think I probably could have done it better. But yeah, I think this is decent enough. Anyways, I think this is still good. I still like it, but yeah, it wasn't exactly what I intended on making. But yeah. Well, that said, I think that will be us for today. I will wrap up and then I will say goodbye. So, if you liked this video, do whatever it is that you'd normally do, whether that be liking it or not. I would, of course, prefer if you liked it, but I'm not going to exactly make you do that. I can't make you do it. And if you don't do it, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But yeah, if you would like to subscribe, it's the same deal. You can do it. You can not do it. I would prefer if you did, but I can't make you do it. You've presumably watched a YouTube video before, so you know where the subscribe button is. I'm really getting tongue-tied today. Yeah, you know where the subscribe button is, probably. So I don't need to point it out to you. It's usually in view. Most people don't watch videos in full screen, to my understanding, so you can usually see it. But yeah, anyways. And yeah, if you choose to watch the next video, I will see you next time. So, with all that said, I'll say goodbye and I will leave you. So, bye-bye.